You don't need to do anything right now. Nothing is required of you. Whatever you were carrying today, whatever thoughts were still moving through you when you lay down, you can simply set those aside for now. They will wait for you. They are patient. And for this little while, you are somewhere else entirely. Find the weight of your body where it rests. Feel the surface beneath you, the gentle pressure along your back, your shoulders, the backs of your legs. Notice where you are warm. Notice where the air touches your skin, cool and easy. Let your hands go soft. Let your jaw go soft. There is nothing to hold on to. Take one slow breath in. Hold it gently, not tightly. Just let it rest at the top for a moment. And let it go. Again, breathing in, slowly, without effort, as though the breath is arriving on its own, and out. One more time, in and out. Good. You are going somewhere quiet tonight, somewhere that exists above the ordinary world, above the noise of it, above the weight of it, above even the clouds themselves. A place where time moves differently, where the only urgency is the slow drip of a copper condenser, the gradual deepening of the sky, the patient turning of a vat that has been turning for 40 days and asks nothing of you except your presence. Let your eyes stay closed. Let your breathing stay slow. And come with me, gently, easily, with no effort at all, up through the layers of the ordinary world, up past the low gray overcast, up into the clear and quiet air above everything. You are almost there. The first thing you notice is the light. It is a pale, sourceless gold, not the sharp gold of direct sunlight, but something softer, something that seems to come from everywhere at once, as though the air itself has been slowly steeped in it. You are standing on a platform, a wide, flat expanse of dark metal and pale wood, and when you look down, you realize you can see the surface of the cloud cover far below you, a continuous rolling white plain stretching in every direction, lit from above by the last warmth of the afternoon sun. It is like standing above the ocean, a still ocean, an ocean made of silence and vapor, and you are floating above it, and the world below that ocean, all its noise and complication and rushing, is very, very far away. You breathe in. The air up here has a quality you have never encountered before. It is cold, but gently cold, not the biting cold of winter, but the clean, clarifying cold of altitude, the kind of cold that makes your thoughts go quiet and your body feel light. And there is a smell to it. A faint, particular smell, something like sulfur, but sweeter than sulfur, something mineral and alive, the smell of air that has never touched the ground, air that has been circling up here among the high currents, picking up traces of things that don't have names yet. You breathe it in again. It fills your lungs like water fills a glass, slowly, completely, edge to edge. The platform sways, just slightly, just a long, slow, barely perceptible sway, like being held in someone's arms while they shift their weight from foot to foot. A thermal current has moved beneath you, lifting one edge of the platform by a fraction and then releasing it, and the whole structure settles back with a sound that is less a sound and more a feeling, a low, resonant hum that you feel in your feet, in the bones of your legs, moving up through your whole body and dissolving somewhere in your chest. You look around. The Cloudline station is a chain of platforms. You can see 3 others from where you stand, connected to this one by walkways. The walkways are narrow things, made of glass panels set in a framework of dark cable, and they arc gently between the platforms like the strings of an instrument, swaying in the same slow rhythm as the platforms themselves. The other platforms are dark and quiet, decommissioned, you understand, left to drift with their old instruments still in place, their measuring equipment and their weather gauges pointing at a sky that no longer needs to be measured. But this platform, the one you are standing on, is lit from within. Warm amber light spills from tall windows along one side of the main structure. The building itself is modest, low-roofed, its walls of pale weathered wood, its roof curved slightly, like the hull of a boat turned upside down. And on the far side, away from the windows, you can see the shapes of large cylindrical forms. The brewing vats, you realize, enormous copper vessels, each one 3 or 4 times your height, arranged in a row along the windward edge of the platform. They are connected by a network of copper pipes and glass tubes, all of it weathered to a warm, dark patina, and even from here you can see the faint shimmer of condensation on their surfaces. From inside the building comes a sound, a low, resonant sound, not quite a note, not quite a hum, but something between the two. The sound of the fermenting vats, you understand. The sound of slow processes working their way through liquid. The sound of time doing its patient work. It is the most calming sound you have ever heard. It is the sound of something that is in no hurry whatsoever. You move toward the door. The planking of the platform is solid and slightly rough underfoot, and the walkway from the landing area to the main building is just a dozen steps, but you take them slowly because there is no reason not to. The wind at this altitude is not strong, just present, just a constant, gentle pressure against one side of your face, carrying with it that sulfur-sweet smell, that high-altitude freshness, that quality of air that has been nowhere near the ground for a very long time. Above you, the sky is a pale, clear blue-white, and the sun is somewhere to the west, beginning its long descent, and the light is already taking on that honey quality, that end-of-afternoon warmth that makes everything it touches look like it was made to be looked at. You reach the door. It is a plain wooden door, slightly swollen from the damp air, and it opens with a sound like a soft exhale, a gentle give of wood against frame, a small release of pressure as the warm air from inside meets the cold air of the platform. And then the warmth reaches you. It comes over you like a slow wave, not hot, not overwhelming, but genuinely warm, the warmth of a room that has been warm for a long time, where the warmth has had a chance to settle into the walls and the floors and the wooden furniture and the rows of clay jars and the heavy wool blanket folded over the back of a low chair. And with the warmth comes the smell. It is something like honey, something like rain, something like the inside of an old wooden chest, the good kind, the kind that holds things worth keeping. And underneath all of that same mineral sweetness you noticed outside, but warmer now, more complex. The smell of the fermenting vats, you realize, the smell of cloud water and high-altitude pollen and frost crystals slowly transforming into something new, something that has no name except the name the Brewmaster has given it in the worn ledger on the workbench. You step inside. The room is larger than it looked from outside. The ceiling is high, higher than you expected, and from it hang dozens of glass cylinders, each one perhaps as long as your arm, filled with liquid in various shades of amber and pale gold and deep copper brown. The cylinders are backlit. There must be a light source above them, behind the ceiling panels, something warm and even, and the effect is extraordinary. The whole room is suffused with amber light, as though you have stepped inside a jar of honey, as though the light itself is slow and thick and patient. The tall glass columns glow. The liquid inside them is perfectly still, or nearly still. You can see, if you look carefully, a tiny slow drift of particles in the warmer varieties, a movement so gradual it is almost not movement at all. Along one wall are the workbenches, long, low tables of pale wood, their surfaces stained with years of use, rings from clay jars, the dark marks of copper implements set down while still hot, the occasional pale smear of frost crystal residue dried to a fine white powder. On the benches are tools, long-handled spoons of copper and wood, glass measuring vessels with careful markings etched into their sides, small clay jars with paper labels, bundles of dried something, a pale, feathery plant matter that you don't recognize, something that grows, perhaps, only up here in the high currents, something that does not exist anywhere below the cloud cover. And at the far end of the room, moving slowly between the workbench and the nearest of the tall glass columns, the Brewmaster, and they are unhurried. That is the first and most important thing you notice. Every movement they make is the movement of someone who has nowhere else to be and nothing else to do, and is at complete peace with both of those facts. They are wearing a long apron, pale and worn over layers of heavy cloth, and their hands, when you catch a glimpse of them as they reach up to check something on the glass column, are the hands of someone who has done careful work for a very long time. They don't look up when you enter, not because they haven't noticed you sense that they have noticed everything, but because there is nothing alarming about your arrival. You were expected, in the way that all quiet guests are expected here. They hum. 2 notes. Just 2. A low note and then a slightly higher note, a small falling interval, repeated without rhythm, without pattern, just whenever it comes. It is not a song, it is just a habit, the sound a mind makes when it is fully occupied with something simple and good. You find a low stool near the workbench and you settle onto it. The wood is warm from the ambient heat of the room. You rest your hands on your knees and you simply watch. The Brewmaster reaches up and carefully removes one of the tall glass columns from its bracket. They carry it to the workbench with both hands, holding it level, moving so smoothly that the liquid inside barely stirs. They set it down with a small, precise click of glass against wood, and then they lean over it and look at it, really look at it, the way you might look at something you have made and are not sure about yet, something that is still in the process of becoming. This tea has been steeping for 3 days, you understand somehow. 3 days of slow infusion, the high-altitude pollen settling in gradual layers at the bottom of the column, the cirrus water, condensed from actual cloud matter, drawn in through the filtration screens on the windward side of the platform, slowly taking on the character of what it has been given. The color is a pale, clear amber, the color of certain late afternoons, the color of old glass. The Brewmaster takes a small copper ladle, a beautiful thing, worn to a high sheen on the handle where it has been held 10,000 times, and dips it into the column. They lift a small measure of the liquid and hold it up against the amber light of the room. They look at it for a long moment. Then they bring it to their lips and take the smallest possible sip, just a taste, just a touch of the liquid against the tip of the tongue, and they are still for a moment, and then they hum. The 2 notes, low and then slightly higher, and they nod very slightly to no one in particular. They set the ladle down. They return the glass column to its bracket with the same careful 2-handed movement. They take up a pen, a worn thing, its nib slightly bent from years of use, and they open the ledger on the corner of the workbench. The ledger is a beautiful object. Its cover is a deep reddish brown, worn at the corners to the pale color of the board beneath, and its pages, when the Brewmaster opens it, are dense with careful handwriting, columns of dates and measurements, small notes in the margins, the occasional small drawing of a glass vessel or a crystal formation. The Brewmaster writes something, just a few words, a number, perhaps a brief observation, and the scratch of the pen against the paper is a sound you feel as much as hear, a dry, precise, satisfying sound, the sound of a record being kept, the sound of time being acknowledged. The pen is set down, the ledger is left open to dry, the brewmaster moves to the next column. This one is darker, a deep, rich copper brown, almost the color of the vats themselves, and it has been steeping, you sense, for much longer, perhaps 10 days, perhaps more. The liquid in this column is not still, it moves very slowly with a circulation that seems to come from within, from some warmth generated by its own slow transformation. The brewmaster doesn't remove this one from its bracket. They simply stand before it and observe it, their arms loose at their sides, their head tilted very slightly. They watch the slow interior movement of the dark liquid. They hum, then they move on. You watch them work their way down the row of glass columns, checking each one, sometimes tasting, sometimes only looking, sometimes making a small note in the ledger, and sometimes only nodding. There are perhaps a dozen columns in this row, and each one is at a different stage of its slow process, and each one has its own color, its own quality of light, its own particular character. The room is full of these slow amber lights. The room is warm and still, and the low resonant hum of the fermenting vats comes through the walls from outside, and the drip and tick of the condensers, small copper devices mounted along the interior wall, drawing moisture from the air and directing it in thin streams into collection vessels, keeps a slow, irregular rhythm, like a clock that has learned to be unhurried. Drip, tick, drip. After a while, you are not sure how long, time moves differently here, as you were told it would, the only clocks the shadows of the distant platform sliding slowly across the floor. The brewmaster straightens from their work and turns toward the door. They glance at you on their way, and for a moment your eyes meet, and there is a warmth in their expression that requires no words. They are going outside. They gesture gently for you to follow if you like. You like. The cold hits you again as you step back onto the platform, but by now it is a familiar cold, the good kind, the clarifying kind, and you welcome it after the deep warmth of the brewing room. The light has shifted. It is lower now, more golden, and the shadows of the equipment and the vats and the walkway supports have grown long across the pale planking. The cloud cover below has taken on a warm pink-orange glow at the edges where the sunlight strikes it from a low angle, and the sky above is still that pale, clear blue-white, but deeper now, beginning its slow turn toward evening. The brewmaster walks toward the edge of the platform, toward the walkway. You follow them. The walkway is narrow, just wide enough for one person, really, and it is made of glass panels set in a cable framework, and when you step onto it, you feel the cold of the glass immediately through the soles of your feet. Even through layers of clothing, the cold of those glass panels is present, a clean and clarifying sensation, the cold of altitude, the cold of height, the cold of air that has been up here for a very long time. The walkway sways as you step onto it, not alarmingly, just that same long, slow, easy sway, like being on a very calm body of water, and below the glass panels, through the glass panels, you can see the cloud cover far below, pink and orange and cream in the evening light. You keep your eyes on the brewmaster's back. They move along the walkway without hesitation, without looking down, their feet finding each glass panel with the ease of long familiarity. The cable framework hums around you, a thin, high sound, very different from the low resonance of the vats, more like the sound of a held breath, the sound of tension held in equilibrium. The wind is slightly stronger here, away from the shelter of the main building, and it presses against you from one side with a steady, even pressure, and you lean into it just slightly, and it holds you. The walkway connects this platform to a smaller, darker one of the decommissioned ones, and the brewmaster steps off the walkway onto its surface with a sound of boots on old metal. You step off after them. The sway of the walkway releases you. You are standing on the second platform. It is quieter here. The equipment on this platform, the old weather instruments, the measuring booms, the antenna structures, is dark and still, and the surfaces are coated with a fine frost, a thin, even layer of ice crystal that catches the low evening light and scatters it in tiny, cold sparks. It smells different here. The sulfur-sweet smell is stronger, sharper, less softened by the warmth of the brewing room, and there is something else underneath it. Something that is almost the smell of snow, but isn't quite. The smell of water at the exact moment of freezing. The smell of a transition. At the far end of this platform, mounted on a low frame, is a large screen. It is perhaps 3 meters wide and 2 meters tall, a mesh of very fine wire stretched across a metal frame, and it is completely coated in frost. The ice has built up in layers over days or weeks, and it has taken on a beautiful texture, not flat, not smooth, but complex and varied, with small ridges and feather shapes and branching crystal formations, all of it lit from the side by the low amber sun. This is the frost collection screen. The brewmaster approaches it and stands before it for a moment, looking at it with the same quiet attention they gave the glass columns, reading something in the frost that you don't yet have the language to read. Then they reach into a pocket of their apron and produce a small tool, a thin blade curved slightly with a handle worn smooth, and a bowl. A wide, shallow bowl of pale ceramic held in one hand. They begin to scrape. The sound of the blade against the frost screen is extraordinary. A soft, dry whisper, not quite a scrape, not quite a brush, the sound of ice crystal giving way to a gentle pressure, the sound of something very fine and very cold and very delicate being carefully harvested. The frost falls into the bowl in small clouds, in tiny drifts, in quantities so small they are almost invisible, and yet they accumulate slowly, steadily, the way all the best things accumulate, into a fine white powder at the bottom of the bowl. The brewmaster works methodically across the screen, left to right, top to bottom, the blade moving in slow, even strokes, the frost surrendering in its own time, the bowl filling with the slowest of all possible glacial processes. They hum. The two notes, low and then slightly higher. You stand nearby and watch and breathe the cold air and feel the walkway's faint sway even here, even on this larger platform, because all the platforms are connected. All of them share the same slow thermal drift, the same long, easy movement in the high currents. After a while, the brewmaster holds the bowl up and tilts it slightly to examine the harvest. A fine layer of frost crystal, perhaps a centimeter deep, covering the bottom of the bowl. They seem satisfied. They tuck the blade away and hold the bowl in both hands, and you notice that the warmth of their hands is already beginning to work on the frost. The very finest crystals at the edges of the bowl are beginning to dissolve, releasing a faint wisp of vapor that rises and disappears into the cold air. They turn back toward the walkway, and you fall into step beside them. The walk back is slower. The brewmaster carries the bowl with great care, keeping it level, preserving the harvest, and you have time to look around to notice things you didn't notice on the way over. You notice that the cloud cover below has shifted slightly, or perhaps the platform has shifted, drifting westward on its thermal current, because the angle of the light on the cloud surface has changed, and what was pink and orange is now a deeper, richer color, something between rose and copper, something that doesn't have a common name. You notice that the stars are beginning to appear above you. Just a few, just the first and brightest, emerging from the deepening blue of the high sky with a patience that seems appropriate to this place. They don't arrive suddenly, they simply become visible, gradually, one at a time, as though they were always there and are only now choosing to be noticed. You step back onto the glass walkway. The cold of the panels comes up through your feet again, that clean altitude cold, that clarifying sensation. The cable hums around you. The wind presses gently against your cheek. And then you are back on the warm platform, stepping through the door, and the amber light wraps around you again, and the smell of the brewing room, honey and rain and old wood and something mineral and sweet, comes over you like something you are beginning to think of as home. Inside, the brewmaster sets the bowl of frost crystals on the workbench with the same precision with which they do everything. The bowl placed exactly, adjusted slightly, placed again, and then they stand over it and look at it. You come to stand beside them and look at it too. The frost crystals are extraordinary things seen close. They are not uniform, each one is slightly different, each one has its own small architecture, its own particular arrangement of angles and planes, and the amber light of the room catches them in ways that the cold white light of the exterior platform did not. And in this warm amber light, they look almost alive. They are alive in a way. They are still in the process of their slow dissolution, still releasing their captured water back into the air, still becoming something other than what they were. The bowl is faintly cold to the touch when you hold your hand near it, a cold that rises from the crystals like a shy opposite of heat. The brewmaster takes a small pinch of the frost, just a small pinch between two fingers, and holds it over one of the glass columns. They open their fingers and the crystals fall, a tiny cascade, into the column's open top. They watch them descend through the amber liquid, slowly, unevenly, each crystal taking its own path downward, rotating gently as it sinks, dissolving as it goes, leaving behind it a faint trace of cold that disperses into the surrounding liquid and is absorbed. They take another small pinch, and another. Gradually, the bowl empties. Not quickly, never quickly here, but over the course of minutes, with each addition carefully considered, the frost crystals are introduced to the column, and each time the brewmaster pauses and watches them fall and dissolve and become part of something larger than themselves. The condensers drip, drip, tick, drip. The vats hum through the walls. The platform sways. When the bowl is empty, the brewmaster sets it aside and picks up the pen and writes in the ledger. A date, a quantity, a brief note. The scratch of the pen. The small sound of the pen being set down. Then they move to the larger vats. Not the ones outside. Those are the primary fermentation vessels, enormous copper cylinders standing in the open air where the temperature shifts and the wind works on them, and the whole slow process of high-altitude fermentation happens over weeks and months. These are the secondary vats inside the brewing room, smaller, perhaps waist-high, made of the same copper but more recently polished, their surfaces warm to the eye even from across the room. There are 4 of them, arranged in a loose square in the center of the space, and they are connected to each other and to the glass columns by a network of copper pipes, some of them fitted with small valves, some with glass inspection windows through which you can see the amber liquid moving in slow, almost invisible currents. The brewmaster moves around them slowly, checking each valve, pressing a palm flat against the side of each vat for a moment, feeling the temperature, you understand, reading the warmth of the metal the way you might read a page. They hum. The two notes. One of the vats seems to please them particularly. They rest their hand against it for longer, and they hum a little more clearly, a little more deliberately, as though the vat and the brewmaster are in some kind of slow conversation that doesn't require words or even sound, just the warmth of copper under a palm and the low resonance of fermentation working through the metal. This is the 40-day batch. You know this somehow, perhaps from the way the brewmaster regards it, with a particular quality of attention, a patience that is different from the patience they give the other vats, older and more settled. This vat has been working for 40 days. Whatever is inside it began as cloud water and high-altitude pollen and a measure of atmospheric honey. Honey made by creatures that exist only up here, only in the high currents, creatures that visit the feathery pale plants that grow on the decommissioned platforms and carry their pollen back to nests built into the cable frameworks, nests you would never notice unless you knew to look for them, and over 40 days it has been slowly, continuously, irreversibly becoming something else. Something that will have a name, something that will be written about in the ledger with a particular kind of care. The brewmaster doesn't open it, doesn't taste it, doesn't adjust it. They simply rest their hand against its warm copper side and feel what it is doing and note in the ledger that it is doing well and leave it alone. That is, you think, a profound form of trust. The scratch of the pen, the set of the pen, the soft exhale of someone who has done what needed to be done and done it well, and can now rest in the knowledge that the rest will take care of itself. The light outside has continued its slow change, and through the tall windows you can see the sky, what is visible of it above the glass columns and the copper pipes and the soft amber glow of the room's interior, and it has shifted from pale gold to a deeper, richer amber, and now the amber is giving way to something cooler, something that is not quite pink and not quite gray, something that happens only in the high atmosphere at the end of the day when the last light is working its way through a lot of air. The cloud cover below is no longer visible from inside the room. It has darkened, and the windows are filled now with the warm amber backlighting of the columns and the deeper color of the sky beyond, and the effect is of a room that is gradually becoming its own light source, the amber glow of the columns taking over from the failing daylight as though they have been waiting patiently for this moment. The brewmaster moves to a shelf along one wall. The shelf holds a collection of clay cups, small, simple things, each one slightly different, each one the work of hands that were trying to make something useful and ended up making something beautiful by accident or by habit. The brewmaster selects 2 cups. They carry them to the workbench and set them down. Then they go to one of the glass columns, one of the shorter ones, one that you haven't noticed before, tucked in a corner of the room, its liquid a very pale, clear color, almost colorless, just the faintest tint of silver blue, and they open a small valve at the base of the column. The liquid flows out in a thin stream, filling the first cup and then the second, and the brewmaster closes the valve when both cups are full and holds them up against the amber light to look at them. The liquid is cool. You can see that from across the room. You can see the faint shimmer of it, the way it holds the light differently from the warmer, deeper varieties, the way it seems to carry a coolness within itself, a quality of altitude and cloud and open sky. The brewmaster carries both cups to the low table near the blanket-covered chair. They set one cup on the table and hold the other, and they look at you, that same warm, wordless expression, and you understand that one cup is for you. You cross the room. You sit in the low chair. You take the cup. It is cool in your hands, not cold, not the cold of the frost crystals or the glass walkway, but the cool of something that has been up here in the high air for a long time, something that carries the temperature of altitude in its very nature. You wrap both hands around the cup and feel the coolness, and then, very slowly, the warmth of your own hands begins to warm the cup, and the coolness softens, and the cup begins to feel like something that belongs to you. You bring it to your lips. The taste is extraordinary. It is cool and clean and impossibly light, like drinking the idea of water, like drinking something that exists at the very beginning of flavor before flavor has committed to being any particular thing. There is a faint mineral quality, that sulfur-sweet note you have been smelling since you arrived, but softened now, warmed by the brewing process into something entirely pleasant, something that opens the back of your throat and settles in your chest like a small, cool light. There is the very faintest trace of sweetness, just a suggestion, just enough to make the coolness feel like a kindness rather than an absence. And there is something else, something you don't have a word for, something that is the taste of this place, of this altitude, of the permanent cloud cover far below and the clear sky above and the thermal currents and the cable hum and the amber light. You take another sip. The brewmaster settles into a chair nearby, a plain wooden chair, its back worn smooth, and holds their own cup in both hands and looks at the room with an expression of complete and uncomplicated contentment. They hum. The two notes. Low and then slightly higher. And then they are quiet, and the room is quiet, and the only sounds are the drip and tick of the condensers and the low resonant hum of the vats and the faint cable song of the walkway outside and the very slow, very deep sound of the platform moving through the air on its thermal current. Time passes, not quickly, not slowly, exactly, just as itself, time passing at the pace of time when nothing is required of it, when it is not being measured or divided or spent. After a while, the brewmaster rises and moves back to the workbench. They are not done for the evening. There is more to be done. There is always more to be done in a place like this, where the work is never finished because the work is the same as the life, and both go on at their own pace and don't need to be hurried. They take up one of the bundles of dried plant matter from the shelf, the pale feathery thing you noticed earlier, and they hold it over the workbench and begin to separate it with their fingers. The dried plant separates easily, its fibers releasing from each other with a sound like the rustling of very old paper, and the brewmaster works through the bundle slowly, sorting the plant matter into different small piles on the workbench surface. Some pieces they set aside entirely. Some they gather into a small heap near the copper mortar. Some they hold up against the amber light, turning them between their fingers, looking at them with quiet attention. The smell of the plant matter is something new in the room's complex of smells. Something dry and faintly sweet, something that is almost the smell of hay but cleaner, higher, something that grew in cold, clear air rather than warm earth. It mingles with the existing smell of the room, the honey rain mineral smell, and the combination is extraordinarily pleasant, a smell that goes directly to some deep part of the mind and tells it that everything is all right, that this is a good place, that nothing here requires alarm. The brewmaster begins to grind. The copper mortar is a beautiful thing, heavy and warm-colored, its interior worn to a high polish, and the pestle in the brewmaster's hand moves with a long, circular, unhurried motion, and the sound of the grinding is a low, rhythmic sound, a sound that has its own slow pulse, its own easy cadence. Round and round. The plant matter gives way gradually, going from fibrous and resistant to smooth and fine, releasing more of its smell as it is broken down, filling the air near the workbench with a concentrated version of that dry, sweet, high-altitude fragrance. Round and round, the pestle, the mortar, the condensers drip, tick, drip, the vats hum, the platform sways. You are still in the low chair, both hands around your cup, and the tea has warmed completely to your body temperature now, and you hold it more out of comfort than necessity, the way you might hold a smooth stone or a familiar object, simply because it is there and it is good, and holding it makes the moment feel more complete. The last of the daylight is fading from the windows. The sky outside has gone through its amber phase and its rose phase, and now it is entering something else entirely. A deep, featureless indigo, the color of the sky at this altitude when the sun has gone, but the darkness hasn't fully arrived. A non-light that is not darkness and not day, but something in between, something that has its own quality, its own particular weight. The cloud cover below, invisible now through the windows, must be dark, a dark plain, a dark ocean, the whole noisy world below it sealed away beneath that dark ceiling. And above you the indigo deepens toward true dark, and the stars are appearing now not one at a time but in clusters, in groups, the whole brilliant population of the high sky gradually making itself visible. Inside the room, the amber light of the glass columns has become the primary light. It is a warm, even, completely unhurried light, a light that has no edges, no shadows, a light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, from the liquid itself, as though the slow processes inside the columns are generating not just flavor and character but light, actual amber light, the light of transformation happening over time. The Brewmaster works in this light without needing any other. Their hands are steady. Their movements are the same as they have been all evening, slow, precise, certain, unhurried. The grinding finishes. The fine powder is transferred to a small jar with a paper label. The label is written in the same careful hand as the ledger. The jar is sealed and set in its place on the shelf among its companions, all labeled, all patient, all waiting to be added to something at the right moment, in the right quantity, in the right way. The Brewmaster washes their hands in a small basin of water, water that has been collected from the condensers, you understand, cloud water, cirrus water, water that has never touched the ground, and dries them on a cloth that hangs from a hook near the workbench. Then they go to the ledger again and write, and the scratch of the pen is the sound of the evening being recorded, the sound of this day being added to all the other days in the worn pages, the sound of a life that is its own evidence. They close the ledger. They stand for a moment with one hand on the closed cover, and they look around the room, at the glass columns with their amber light, at the copper vats with their warmth, at the condensers with their patient drip, at you in the low chair with your cooling cup, and they hum, the two notes, low and slightly higher. Then they go to the window and look out at the deep indigo sky. You rise from the chair eventually, and you go to stand beside them. The view from the window is unlike anything you have ever seen from the ground. The platform is drifting westward, has been drifting westward all evening, following the thermal current in its long, slow arc, and the perspective on the cloud cover has changed, so that now you can see, very far to the west, where the cloud cover ends and the open sky begins at the horizon, and at that horizon there is still the very last trace of color, a thin line of deep amber rose, the final evidence of the sun that is already gone. Above that line, the indigo, and above the indigo, the stars, so many of them, so clear at this altitude, so present, so patient in their slow turning. The glass of the window is cool against the air near your face. You can feel the cold of the outside pressing gently against the glass, and the warmth of the room pressing back, and the window holding the conversation between them. Far below, through the cloud cover, the world is going on without you. It is doing what it does, its noise, its light, its rushing, and none of it reaches you here. Not a sound, not a vibration, not a single urgency. You are above all of it, and the cloud cover is between you and it, and the cloud cover is thick and permanent and makes no exceptions. The brewmaster turns from the window. They move to the small stove in the corner of the room, a simple iron thing, its top warm and dark, and they set a small vessel of water on it. More tea, perhaps, or simply water warmed for the end of the evening. They add a small measure of something from one of the jars on the shelf, you can't see what, and they adjust the flame to its lowest setting and leave the vessel to warm on its own time. Then they take the wool blanket from the back of the low chair and they hold it out toward you. You take it. It is heavier than you expected and softer, and it smells of the room, of honey and rain and old wood and the mineral sweetness of high-altitude air, and you wrap it around your shoulders and return to the chair. The brewmaster brings the second cup, a fresh one filled from the warming vessel, something that steams very slightly in the amber light of the room. They set it on the table beside you. Then they take their own chair nearby, and they settle into it with the ease of someone who has been settling into the same chair for many years, and they look at the room with the same expression of complete and uncomplicated contentment, and they hum. The two notes, low and slightly higher, and then quiet. The room settles. That is the only way to describe it. The room settles, the way things settle at the end of a day that has been good and complete and has asked nothing more of you than your presence. The amber light of the columns is the same as it has been all evening, steady and warm, the liquid inside them still drifting in its slow, invisible currents, still doing its patient work. The condensers continue their rhythm. Drip, tick, drip. The vats hum through the walls, that low, resonant copper sound, the sound of fermentation working through metal, the sound of time made audible. The 40-day batch hums at a slightly lower frequency than the others. You can almost hear it if you listen, a deeper, more settled sound, the sound of something that has been becoming itself for a long time and is almost, but not quite, ready. The platform sways, long and slow and easy, a thermal current lifting one edge and releasing it, and the whole structure settling back and settling and settling. You pick up the new cup. This tea is warmer than the first one and slightly different in character. There is more sweetness in it, more of that high-altitude honey quality, and the mineral note is softer, wrapped in warmth, present but gentle. It warms your hands. It warms your throat when you sip it. It warms your chest and then spreads from there outward into your arms and your legs, a warmth that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with being where you are supposed to be, doing what you are supposed to be doing, which is nothing at all. The blanket is around your shoulders. The chair is warm beneath you. The amber light is steady. Outside, the deep indigo of the cloud-covered sky has gone now fully to dark. Not a complete dark, not an empty dark, but the dark of a sky full of stars, the dark that is also a kind of light, the light of distance and time and the patient turning of things very much larger than any single day or any single worry. The brewmaster has their eyes closed. Not sleeping, or perhaps sleeping, it is difficult to tell, and it doesn't matter. Simply resting with the ease of someone who has done their work and is now content to be still. Their hands are loose in their lap. Their breathing is slow and even. They are, you think, the most at-rest person you have ever seen. You take another sip of tea, the condensers drip, the vats hum, the platform sways. Far below, the cloud cover is dark and still. Far above, the stars are turning at their own immense and unhurried pace. And here, in between, in the warm amber light of a room above the world, everything is exactly as it should be. Your cup is nearly empty. You finish the last small sip and set the cup on the table beside you and let your hands rest in your lap, and the warmth of the tea is still in your chest, still spreading its slow warmth through you, and the blanket is around your shoulders, and the amber light is all around you, and the sounds of the room, the drip and tick of the condensers, the low hum of the vats, the faint cable song from the walkway outside, are as familiar to you now as the sounds of any room you have ever rested in. More familiar, perhaps. There is a quality to this place that is very old, older than the platform, older than the equipment, older than the brewmaster and their ledger and their careful work. The quality of height, the quality of being above things, the quality of a place where the ordinary urgencies of the world below simply cannot reach, where they fall away like water off the sides of the copper vats, where they are absorbed into the cloud cover and disappear. You feel the weight of your body in the chair, your back, your shoulders, your hands in your lap, heavy and warm, your legs, long and loose, your feet, which were cold on the glass walkway but are warm now, have been warm for a long time. The amber light moves very slightly as the platform sways, the glass columns shifting just a fraction, the light they cast shifting with them, and the movement is so gentle and so regular that it is already a part of the rhythm of the room, the long, slow breathing of the platform, the thermal sway, the easy drift westward through the high, dark air. The brewmaster hums, very quietly, just the two notes, just once, and then they are still again. The condensers drip, drip, tick, drip. You are very comfortable. This is a simple observation, and it is entirely true. You are very comfortable, and the room is warm, and the light is amber and steady, and there is nothing you need to do. No tasks, no decisions, nothing waiting to be resolved. The 40-day batch hums in its copper vat, and it needs nothing from you. The frost collection screen on the decommissioned platform will gather its crystals through the night without any assistance. The condensers will drip, and the glass columns will glow, and the ledger will wait open on the workbench for tomorrow's notes, and none of it requires your attention. You can simply be here, in this warm room, above the world, in the amber light. The platform sways, long and slow. Your eyes are heavy, not uncomfortably heavy, just the comfortable weight of eyes that have seen enough for one evening, that have been given more than enough beauty, that are ready to close and let the amber light continue without them. Let them close. There is nothing you need to see. The amber light will be there when you open them, or it won't. It will have shifted, deepened, changed to something else, but it will still be warm, it will still be good, it will still be the light of this place above the world. Let them close. The sound of the vats, low, resonant, copper, the sound of the condensers, drip, tick, the sound of the walkway in the wind, a thin, high, steady hum, the platform sways, long, slow, easy. The brewmaster breathes, you breathe, in and out, slow, like the platform, like the thermal current, like the long drift westward through the dark air, the amber light, still there, the smell of the room, honey, rain, something mineral and sweet, the warmth of the blanket, the warmth of the chair, the warmth spreading from the center of your chest outward, still there, all of it, still there. The vats hum. Somewhere below the cloud cover, the world is going on. It is very far away. It cannot reach you here. You are above it. You are in the warm amber room. You are safe. You are still. You are exactly where you need to be. The condensers drip, tick, drip. The platform sways, long, slow. The brewmaster hums, 2 notes, low and slightly higher, and then quiet. The amber light, the warm room, the high dark air outside, the stars turning, slowly, slowly, the 40-day batch, still becoming, patient, in no hurry, drip, tick, drip, the sway, long, slow, you are warm, you are still, you are here, and here is enough, here is more than enough, sleep, the amber light holds you, the warm room holds you, the high air holds you, the platform drifting west on its slow thermal current holds you gently, without effort, the way all good things hold the things they love. Drip, tick, the vats, the stars, the sway, long, slow, still,